Hey there, duelists. So, did your opponent just activate Mystic Mine on the very first turn and you're pulling your hair out? Or did they just take 10 minutes and set up a huge board full of interruptions, negations, monsters that can't be targeted or can't be destroyed? Or did they just set 4 to 5 trap cards and, of course, like summon an Eldritch in the process, right? What do? It's simple. You just draw the out, bro. And that is what we're going to be talking about today on APS Plus. So, draw the out. That is a phrase that has come up a lot in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. It's been sort of popularized in the last year or so. It kind of is a tongue-in-cheek way of saying, well, this thing is extremely strong and broken, but it's okay as long as you draw the out. The out usually being a card that's not searchable and is just specific to the situation. So in the case of Mystic Mine, just drawing the out would mean like top decking spell trap removal, right? Your Cosmic Cyclone, your whatever that is, right? Twin Twisters, Feather Duster. Against the combo field, it might be, oh, well, you should just have drawn Nibiru, or, top deck Dark Ruler No More, Forbidden Droplet, you should have had Super Poly, right? And if it's against a trap deck, Harpy's Feather Duster, evenly matched, Lightning Storm, why didn't you have it? Just draw the out, it's simple. And while I think it's said as a joke, it does sort of seem like something that Yu-Gi-Oh players are, it's kind of like, I guess, exposing a deeper frustration with the way that the game is played today. In two ways. The first is that if you don't see the card that you need, and it's usually an unsearchable one, in that first turn whenever the setup has happened against you, you probably lose. And I think that also it's kind of is talking about how like it's impossible to have the solutions to everything at every time. So to go back like really quickly to that Mystic Mine thing, the reason why a lot of people dislike Mystic Mine, aside of just how annoying it actually is the fact that the cards that out it, like Cosmic Cyclone or whatever, are spell and trap removal. Spell and trap removal, though, is not actually very useful for you in modern Yu-Gi-Oh against most like combo decks, because most of the time those are entirely monster based and their fields will end entirely on monsters. So having Cosmic Cyclone is actually going to be a dead card against most combo decks. They've finished their combo, you're taking your first turn, you can't use Feather Duster or whatever Twin Twister's card because it's just really not of any use. They don't have any spells or traps, or maybe they're like useless ones. But then to deal with the combo decks, you gotta have Dark Ruler No More, you gotta have Droplets, you gotta have this or that. But then those aren't going to help you against Mystic Mine. And the same kind of goes for like a trap deck, right? You got to have the spell and trap removal to stop a deck like Eldritch or a deck like Trap Tricks or whatever, Floowandereeze that just like settle out of trap cards. But then that means that that's not useful against combo decks. And it kind of just is this big spiraling circle of like, you can't possibly have everything you need all the time. And yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of a game of RNG, so even if you did have all those cards in your deck, you might not draw them at all, you might not draw the one that you need for the situation. It's a lot to ask to dilute your deck, putting all of these extra cards in. There's a lot to say about that. I'm not saying that like mentality is right or wrong, but I just think it's kind of an interesting thing. And so it's all become this amalgamation of just draw the out, bro. And I think that we really do need to, I say we, it's really more of Konami's problem. I think that it sort of sucks that we've reached this point where people feel so hopeless about things. Because the truth is, you guys ready for a Yugi Boomer rant? Bet you didn't see it coming. It's definitely not what we talk about almost every day on this channel. There was a period of time in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where main decking spell and trap removal was kind of the norm. And there's also a period of time where the cards that you would use to deal with monsters were pretty all-purpose, but also not extremely overpowering. Like, this is where we think about maybe a card like Book of Moon, a card like Forbidden Lance to maybe protect your monster against a certain spell or trap thing, a card like Econ, right, that sort of thing. Maybe even if you can go like really far back, like Smashing Ground, right, to get rid of a monster, or Deprison to stop an attack. And there was a period of time when all of this stuff was like staple in decks. Like it was just kind of normal to run these things. And also the expectation was that games weren't really ending in one turn. If your opponent played a Floodgate against you, or your opponent had a trap heavy deck in general, or just had some annoying field spell, it wasn't going to like stop you outright. It just meant that you'd have to wait a few turns, maybe not going to do exactly what you wanted to do, while you waited to draw your MST, or whatever card you're using to deal with that. Dust Tornado, Twister, those are a few others. And similarly, if there was a troublesome monster in the field, it was usually only one troublesome monster. Sure, maybe it can't be targeted, so you couldn't use your Book of Moon, but it's okay, because your deck still has like Torrential Tribute, maybe you could use that to deal with it, or maybe your deck has, like a single Dark Hole, something like that, that doesn't target and can like get rid of it. And like, if it's a trap deck, you still weren't going to lose outright because most of the trap decks were running 1-for-1 traps. Things like Bottomless Trap Hole or Dimensional Prison, that sort of thing, where you could sometimes just sort of outlast the trap cards. But comparatively today, a lot of trap decks are running much more blowout cards. In fact, all of the decks are sort of running blowout cards. It's an expectation that trap decks aren't really running one-for-one removal. They're running like floodgates and hard negations. And so, I guess that Draw the Out has become this weird kind of like, it's a hard truth about the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not just RNG, but also so much is reliant on just seeing the cards. And I think that it's, maybe, I've mentioned this in a video in the past, but like maybe Konami's plan with like leaving cards like Mystic Mine legal is to get people to run more spell and trap removal in their main decks. And if they ran more spell and trap removal in their main decks, yes, it would slow their combos down, but if everyone's having to do it, then maybe it means that the strength of the average combo deck gets diluted. Not saying that logic follows perfectly or that I entirely support it, but I'm just thinking like maybe that's, the incentive, right? And, we've seen Konami make formats in the past, not all too distant past, of like, trap cards being maybe more relevant. Like I remember, for instance, in 2020, when VFD, or True King of All Calamities, was really popular in like the virtual world deck, a lot more people were going towards trap cards, like spell and trap removal and stuff, because VFD shut off monster effects, but if that was the only thing on the field, then all you had to do is just last a turn or two and maybe just get rid of him using spells and traps. I am a fan of this approach in general. I think that it's cool when combo decks can be strong, but they can't, make everything, and you're just encouraged to use spells and traps to outlast them. To me, that's like interactive, and that feels a little bit healthier and more fun. But I am not so much a fan of, the extreme nature of Draw the Out when it comes to like Dark Ruler No More, or Nibiru, or Super Poly, or whatever, because those cards aren't searchable. And I've also expressed in the past how I don't really like that those cards tend to be so polarizing. It either means like the player who made a huge board, it just wins automatically. And I'm not just talking about combo decks. I'm talking about that could be a trap deck too. The person who just set 5 traps could win automatically if you don't draw the hyper polarizing out that wipes everything that they've done away. So I don't like, just these huge swingy RNG cards. I would much rather it be kind of a piece your way through whatever your opponent did and kind of like grind it out, war of attrition, something like that. I don't know. Another kind of related thought that I had that I just thought I'd like mention in this video too is I feel like nothing's really very impressive in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. So whenever I see people like thinking about combos in general, this sort of like Draw the Out thing comes up because like I remember I read on Reddit, somebody, when the first like new Blackwing support that's coming in this next set got announced, people were like, oh, there's this really cool combo you can do to like make a bunch of negations and crazy things. And that's nothing new, right? Every deck can kind of just combo off, and it's kind of the point I'm making is so many decks can combo off, but when I read the comments, like what people were replying to, they were just like, okay, yeah, this board loses to Dark Ruler No More. And that's something that comes up a lot now, is like, yeah, this combo's great and all, but it loses to Nibiru, it loses to Dark Ruler No More, it loses to Super Poly. And it's kind of just gotten to the point where like there's so many things that a deck can lose to that like it just almost isn't really a worthwhile conversation to have, because these sacky, sort of swingy cards are just so powerful that you can't expect your deck to really like be able to deal with all of them. It can deal with maybe one or some or whatever, but your opponent can't really search them, so there's not much use in worrying about it. I thought that was just sort of like related to the topic. And similarly, it's kind of funny to see how many decks nowadays just casually have hand loops. Has anybody ever like noticed this? I kind of wanted to make a separate video on it, I might still, about like the number of decks where like there's like some 1.5 card combo that like loops 4 cards out of the opponent's hand. Like the new Neos deck can do that, the Mermail like deck can do that, the Deep Sea Mermail deck can just like loop 5 cards. Like it's crazy. Like I've seen like the 6 Samurai deck can like triple Trish loop you or something, and no one even talks about this. I think that really speaks to just how crazy the power creep is, or just how strong the outs are. Like it's just expected that, yeah, sure, those decks can do that, but I suppose like hand traps and Nibiru will just save the day and it keeps them in check. I don't know. Yeah, so I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the whole concept of like just draw the out? Like, is it just a fun joke that you're making, or does it represent maybe a deeper dissatisfaction with the state of things right now? For me, I think it's the latter. All right, that's gonna be it. Make sure you guys subscribe to APS Plus. Hopefully we can get to 100K subs. That's the goal here. I'll see you guys next time with more riveting Yu-Gi-Oh! Complaints. All right, pass turn.